All right. Well, thank you folks for coming out today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dave Stokes. I'm a community manager for MySQL products. For those who've been on MySQL for a while, you might remember me. I used to be the certification manager for MySQL AB. So if you have a certification for 5.5 or around that time period, you might have my name on the bottom of your certification. My email address is david.stokes@oracle.com. Twitter handle is @Stoker. Have the slides up as of today at slideshare.net/DavidMStokes. I have a blog at opensourcedba.wordpress.com. If you have any questions, please blurt them out. You won't throw me off. I used to be a stand-up comic. I might make a your mama joke, but it won't throw me off. And I'd rather you interrupt me and get your question answered than have you take it home and let it boil for a long time. So, what are we talking about today? Well, MySQL 5.7 came out in October, and we made a lot of security changes, and they've been impacting people in a lot of different ways. How many folks here are database administrators or have to deal with keeping the database safe? Okay. Basically, I'm going to talk about the main overviews. I could dig into each one of these features for about a 3-hour talk each, which would bore you to death, but let's get started. Before you ever upgrade MySQL, do yourself a favor and do a backup. Read the release notes, because we do put hints in there about things that have changed and what will bite you in the butt. Double check your hardware status. I can stroll this way, it's better. Recently I had a customer down the street come to me, complain the database is running slow, walked in their computer room, the RAID array had all the lights flashing, they were losing 2 disks at the same time, but it wasn't the RAID array that was the problem, it was the database was slow. So make sure you're diagnosing all your hardware, make sure everything's working great for you. Make sure there's no bad memory, make sure you're ready to go, make sure you have plenty of time. Practice on an old machine. Do some more backups and then start the upgrade. So, for those of you who aren't DB folks, but you're security folks, MySQL is kind of a hard target to hit for security. All databases are. They're designed to get data in and out. They're not really designed to be secure, so there's a lot of loopholes. In general, for us, it's usually authentication. I'll talk about that a little bit, and privileges. Usually people are too generous giving away privileges, and that ends up biting you in the rear. Also, if you are doing secure connections like SSL, there's some hoops to jump through to make sure that you get all the authentication you want. MySQL authentication system. When you connect to the box, the first thing the server does is it checks your host. Is your host blacklisted? If not, it's going to let you in. And then it's going to look at a hash of the username and password. It's not exactly rigorous there. So if the host is okay and there's a good username, it will let you in. It's very permissive. It may not be the same account. Years ago I found this out because a boss of mine was doing the year-end reviews for all employees and didn't know that he had different permissions at home than he had at work. So I essentially had him locked out of stuff that he thought he should have permission to. Fortunately, my predecessors had set it up so that Bob at 10.10 wildcard was not the same as Bob at the company name. Unfortunately, to get through this, you have to hand audit, which is a good practice anyway every so often. By the way, if you've never hand audited something that you think is secure and has been great for a long time, whether it's a database or not, it can be frightening what you'll find in there. Privileges. In the database arena, normally you have to have privileges to do things. Privileges to read, that's called a select privilege. Update privileges to change stuff. Delete privileges. Packages like PHP admin, which is a very popular piece of software for MySQL administration, used to give all new users, by default, drop privilege. If that doesn't scare you, change the word privilege to baby or laptop. Drop baby, drop laptop. This means people can get rid of your data for you when you don't want them to. So, my best advice is be stingy with privileges. Don't hand them out till you have to. It's easier to apologize than to rebuild your database all the time. Also, I like to recommend, and I'll talk about this a little bit more, use proxy accounts. If you have an accounting department that tends to scale up and scale down with a seasonal flow of business, use a proxy account. Set up one for accounting, and then when you get Bob, Julie, and Matt in for the accounting seasonal work, you just proxy over to the accounting account, and you don't have to set up individual accounts for all these folks. Okay, 5.7 came out last October. MySQL has always been kind of nasty, you'll see why, on upgrades. So we've made these changes, and for the most part they've been received rather well. We did catch a couple people short, but I'll show you where the problems are. Best things about 5.7 is better performance. We now have a native JSON data type, parallel replication within a database. By the way, if you don't know, MySQL was taken over by Oracle about 6 years ago. A lot of us originally thought, oh my God, why do they need another database? Oracle has 13 database properties. They came in, took a look at it, and said, hey, you're really good here, but you need some engineering talent out here. Go staff up to ramp this up. We're making money for Oracle. We're hiring. Our development staff is probably 4 times larger than it was 6 years ago. Our QA staff's gone from 1.5 persons to about 30 people. We're always looking for talent, so see me afterwards or go to oracle.com and look for the career section. Biggest change is now when you install a fresh installation of MySQL, it forces a root password on you. The other day I did an install and it gave me NLBQ as a password. It records this in the log file, usually var log mysql.log. Hunt for it, log in with it, change it. Why do we do this? Well, a lot of folks are going to the cloud now, and they ask their cloud provider, hey, spin me up a new database. Well, usually on that type of installation, in the past, we just gave you a root account with no password. So that's like giving liquor and car keys to a 14-year-old boy on a Friday night. Not a good thing. Also, we used to force on you an anonymous account. An anonymous account is an account without a username and without a password. So not only do we give them liquor and car keys, we also gave them fireworks and a loaded pistol. With an anonymous account, depending on how the system's set up, you could get in and do all sorts of mischief. But at least you had access to the box. And if you didn't even have explicit permissions to do stuff, you had basically the pathing. You watch people, see what they're doing in their process list, and get your way in there. Also, we used to give you a test database whether you wanted it or not. So with the anonymous account and a test database and some curiosity, a fairly clever hacker could watch what was going on in the system and probably run TCP/IP dump and sniff enough stuff to get dangerous. Well, we no longer do the test account. We no longer do the anonymous account. We're forcing the root password. So things are tightening up a lot. So, as I mentioned earlier during an upgrade or install, we'd wipe out your root password sometimes. Not a good idea. Now, if you are doing an install and you don't want a random password, you put in the option --unsecure, and it creates a root account without a password. So if you're used to things before 5.7, you want it to work the same way in your scripts, --unsecure. Usernames. It used to be up to 16 characters. That was good 20 years ago when we started out. Usernames now have gotten longer. Right now we support 32 characters long. We had a lot of customers saying, hey, we're now using corporate forced identities that are longer than 16. Please increase that. Also, we added the if not exists on the create user statement. So if you are doing things like running MySQL dump or other program and saving off the user files and bringing things back, that helps. This also is very helpful if you are transferring stuff from, say, like a production environment to a test environment, or vice versa, and you want to bring over users. This lets you keep you from wiping out the old version, because it used to be it was real pain in the butt to copy things over. Also, we have a new alter user command, or expanded alter user command. With all security features you'll see later, we had to come up with a way to be able to access that. The alter user foo at localhost account lock is a way to lock up someone's account. If you have someone that leaves or someone gets injured and you want to keep that account from getting used, put that on there. If you have new users you have to set up accounts for, but you don't want them having access so you can train them. That's a great way of doing it. Used to be you used to do all sorts of nasty tricks to get in there. Used to have people who put asterisks behind usernames using VI. Not really a great practice, but that's something they can do. Also, if you have everything sealed up and you're not worried about outside threats, you always have threats inside sniffing your data. Now, we support SSL and TLS with OpenSSL and YASL. We're in the midst of changing this, so if you have any feedback, let me know. We use OpenSSL with our enterprise product, which is the product you get with a support contract, and we're using YASL with the community version, which is the free to use. By the way, when Oracle took over MySQL, they promised that they would keep supporting an open and free version of MySQL. We're going to keep doing that forever, as long as we can. That responsibility to the European courts ran out in 2015. My bosses say, yeah, we'll keep having a free version of MySQL as long as people want it. For old hands, if you go through the MySQL.user table, you'll see that there's no longer a password column. Why is that? Well, it's no longer just a password. It could be an authentication string. You might be passing a hash. You might be passing some other token. And we changed that to reflect the change. Unfortunately, if you're used to the old way, you have to notice it before you get stuck. Password rotation. If your company policy is that you will change your passwords every 90 days, it will have at least one uppercase, one lowercase, and one special character. You can now do that. MySQL now supports that. You can make it as complex as you want. Password lifetime for us is measured in days. If you set it to 0, it means no rotation. If you set it to null, it goes to whatever the system standard is. Also, if you want, you can also ban certain words, 4 letters or longer, from being in your password file. I don't know how many of you have actually found out that everyone in your department is using the word password or QWERTY or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as passwords, or certain 4-letter words. But you can now ban those. What you do is you enable strong password verification. You can tune this down or up as you need for a number of characters, length, the complexity in mixed cases or special characters. What you do is you put these special words in a password file. Even if you mix case them, it recognizes them and it will not let you use those as a password. Many years ago, when I was an undergraduate, I was hanging around a Hero Minds shop, and they had implemented random passwords. And unfortunately, the first lady in their department got Big Bottom as her first randomly generated password, and then 6 weeks later got Large Rear as her password. And they had to prove with the source code to her and her lawyer that it was randomly generated. Don't put yourself in that sort of position. Also, we support a lot of authentication plugins, and we're coming with more. Like I mentioned, in the old days, we just had passwords. Well, now things are getting more and more complex. We support external authentication. This means you're going to pass it off to something like an LDAP server or a Windows server, or use PAM or Kerberos or something like that. So you're taking your password, and we have the mechanism to push it off to whatever you're doing approval from and getting the approval or the disapproval back. We also have proxy users I mentioned earlier. This lets you set up, as I mentioned in the accounting example, ways to have accounts out there that are kind of like a generic function accounts, but still give people their individual accounts. Here's a list of several of the plugins that we have right now. Native authentication, which matches the password against it says password column. It should say authentication column, or the account row. By the way, the old hash for the pre-4.1 MySQL password has gone away with 5.7. That used to be a way of running some of the hashes against the dictionary and guess your way into a server. We have one that does SHA-256 password hashing. So if that's your company standard, you can use that. We also have one that prevents all client connections to any account that uses it. Why would you use this? Maybe you have stored procedures that are used by multiple folks, but you don't want that stored procedure password getting out. We also have a plugin that lets you send the password clear text without hashing or encryption. This can be used by other plugins that we haven't written yet, or you might want to write, or are in the thing, and let the client figure out what's going on. We also authenticate over a Unix socket, and we also have a very well-documented test plugin. So if you need to write your own, support your own company stuff, we have lots of details on there on how to set the hooks to go to either an internal or external authentication. At startup, the server automatically will generate server-side and client-side SSL certificates and key files if the auto-generate cert variable is enabled. Why are we doing this? Well, we have more and more clients coming to Oracle and saying, you know, it's great that you're doing all these other things, but we need everything encrypted on the wire. We can't trust, you know, that the wire is impregnable. We need to make sure that there's no one sniffing on the VPN. So please make sure that SSL is there. As I mentioned, the old password hash has been removed. This is from MySQL 4.1 and earlier. If you really, really, really need that, see me. There's some ways I can show you how to get around that, but it's not a good idea. We also have support for multiple AES encryption modes. Now, table encryption. In the old days when I used to do PCI work with MySQL 5.0 and 5.1, what I used to do is I used to have this nice little routine to encrypt data and throw it into a blob field in a table. Well, that was good enough 10, 15 years ago. Doesn't quite work now. So we now have at-rest encryption for the NODB table space. By the way, if you're running MyISAM, please come into the 21st century. Convert over to NODB. It's faster in all cases. It's crash resistant. It's ACID compliance, and it's where Oracle's spending its money. MyISAM is 60s technology with a 1970s implementation. Please migrate. Now, our table space encryption uses a two-tier encryption key. It consists of a master encryption key and a table space key. When a table is encrypted, the table space key is encrypted and stored in the table space header. Now, when you want to change that, NODB uses the master encryption key to decrypt the table space key. The encrypted version of the table space key never changes, but the master encryption key may be changed as required. We're using Oracle's key encryption software that they've been using with the Oracle databases for 10, 15 years. It's very stable, very rugged, and yes, you got to pay for it. One of our competitors has a version of table space encryption that's one-layer encryption that was written by some guys at Google who handed off the code to them and ran away quickly. They also will charge you for the management software. If you want to run this table space and you're not good at writing your own management software, you're going to have to pay for it. Right now, there is no open source key management software out there. If anyone knows of any, please let me know. And that is the hard part of the equation. Okay, bonus round for the security folks. If you have a database around, make sure there's multiple folks that know how to restore the data. Restore an entire database, restore a table, or restore a line. We have some tools, like in the MySQL utilities, MySQL DB diff. They'll actually let you see line-by-line differences in tables and be able to generate stuff that will update the information between servers if they're out of whack. Also, tune the most frequently run queries. They will save you the most overrun time. If you run something 10,000 times an hour and you shave a tenth of the time off, it'll save you much more time than the job that runs once a month and runs for 4 or 5 hours. Also, your DBA is worried about disk reads. Reading off a disk is 100,000 times slower than reading out of memory. So if this gentleman here could click his fingers once a second for 100,000 seconds, we can come back in the middle of next month on Tuesday and watch him through the afternoon and finish up. So, yeah. It'd be very exciting for you when the fingers start falling off. So, database security is not one size fits all. Database administrators, good ones, are paranoid. Good security folks are paranoid. What will go wrong will often go wrong at the most spectacular time to do it. So make sure you have backups, make sure people know how to do stuff. The other thing I run into is people say, oh, I read that Google does this, or Facebook does that. And they say, I want my company to be like Facebook, I want my company to be like Google, so therefore I'm going to do what they do. It does not work, folks. They've evolved systems to work with what they do with on a daily basis. And unless you are Facebook or you are Google, you don't have the same workload, you don't have the same data requirements, you don't have the same service levels. So don't see that, oh, someone's doing something, I need to do exactly what they're doing. It's good to look at it and copy what they're doing if it fits. If not, examine it and keep it in the back of your mind. Well, believe it or not, originally they were wondering if I'd run into a good hour, but I usually like to run things short on the slides and long on the Q&A, because I know that's usually where people have where they want to get their information from. If you want a copy of the slides, slideshare.net/DavidMStokes, or ping me. I'm always on Twitter at Stoker. By the way, if you go back through tweets from 2 years ago, there was a Nicole Kidman movie called Stoker. I had a lot of fun with their executive producer. I just wanted him to offer me even $1 for the Twitter handle, and they wouldn't do it. They were cheap bastards. So if you go back, you see something about red-haired nudity 2 years ago. It wasn't me. So what MySQL, what Oracle, what database security questions can I answer for you folks? Boy, you're quiet. The best starting point is Chapter 2 of the MySQL manual. That's about 40 pages, last time I printed it out, of database security practices. It talks about setting up accounts, running the server as the user MySQL instead of root, to keep people from trying to exploit that to take over the server. There's an entire litany of stuff in that one chapter. From there, you can branch out into books like the MySQL Administrator's Bible by Sherry Cabral. That has a list of best practices. Google on the net to see what's going on. But those are probably the two first stepping stones I tell you to go for. Unfortunately, no. What's real funny is there's a tuning script that was written many, many years ago that's still out on the web that people download, and they're running against a modern version of MySQL. And it gives them all sorts of performance tuning measurements that make absolutely no sense on modern box. Unfortunately, because it's been out there and it's Googleable, people still use it and then set it up and run their box and then end up wondering, gee, I've got a 16-core box but it's only running on one core, what's the problem? So I don't know of any scripts like that will tell you how bad you're doing. But the great thing is, you're not going to have your database sitting out on the internet unprotected by itself. You're going to have it behind a firewall. So 99% of the script kiddies out there aren't ever going to see your box anyway. So that's a big thing. No. The gentleman who writes the MySQL utilities, which is a bunch of free scripts we have in Python that will let you do things like copy databases, set up replication, do automatic failover and all that. We were talking about trying to do an audit for that, and he said, yeah, well, it works on a box that has 20 users, but when you get to a government site that has 200 or 2,000 users, it's kind of a pain in the butt to do some of those tests. But I'm still nudging him, trying to get him to tackle that. So, yes, sir. Uh-huh. The MySQL running the NODB storage engine is ACID compliant.
Okay. And then another
PCI compliant, it depends on the way you implement it. I've gone through 2 PCI audits back with older versions of MySQL. It depends on how you put it in, who your auditor is. I know several banks who are running, and credit unions that are running MySQL as their main database. Mm-hmm. Yeah. As an Oracle employee and an Oracle stockholder, thank you for using Oracle and our encryption tools. As for ripping out Oracle and throwing in MySQL, it depends on your installation. Usually the database part of it, the actual software, is the real cheap end of the deal. It's the processes and procedures and the policies and getting all that redone usually kills you. Yeah. Yeah. The Oracle database server is like having an aircraft carrier, and MySQL is more like having an F-150 pickup truck. If you really need to take 5,000 people across an ocean and generate electricity and have people land on your roof, it's great. If you don't need that, MySQL might be your choice. Years ago, I went to a brick and mortar company that had gone onto the internet and tripled their sales and then tripled them again. And I walked into a database administrators meeting, and they had a huge conference room, and they told me, all the senior Oracle DBAs are in this room, the junior DBAs are in the room next door slaved, so we're ready to hear all this wisdom. And I said, well, where's your guy that does MySQL? Billy? Has anyone seen Billy? And Billy was off changing the boss's secretary's PC, and then he had to change some ink cartridges and all that. 80% of their revenue came from Billy, but they had this big Oracle installation that took a small army to run. But, yes, sir. We haven't really come up with a security baseline yet. We work with a lot of things like OWASP and all that. I couldn't tell you who the developers are actually talking to, or the professional services folks are, because I don't run into them often enough to be able to pick their brains. Baselines are kind of hard to set because, once again, it depends more on the business model than the actual implementation. I mean, no matter how good you are, it doesn't help if someone has written their password underneath the keyboard on a Post-it note. So we tend to try to stay away, or at least I do, from giving baseline recommendations. It's more like, what are good practices? What keeps you safe? Are your processes documented and well known? No other questions? No. Well, if that's it, thank you for coming out. Enjoy the show. Make sure you thank these guys in the red shirt, guys and gals in the red shirts. They're doing this because they love you and they're doing it for the community. They're not doing it for the applause, although a fist bump or a handshake would probably help them out. Other than that, thank you very much. If you have any questions, be sure to ping me. And thank you all for coming out.